It was a normal morning at the construction site in the south of Seoul City. While the other workers were working hard, this young man was standing in a corner, dumbfounded. He was Tae-suk, our main character. At this moment, Tae-suk was staring at the notification on his phone screen. It was a message from the Human Resources Department of Jinsung Group, informing him that he had failed the recruitment interview a few days ago. Tae-suk was still upset about failing when someone called. A fat and chubby man shouted at Tae-suk, "Are you playing again, huh?" Tae-suk quickly put away his phone, smiled and said, "Mr. Jo-song, have you finished your work?" The fat man named Jo-song was about to accuse Tae-suk of lying, but he looked closely and saw that Tae-suk had actually finished all his work, and it was very perfect. The fat Jo-song. He frowned and asked Tae-suk, "You only have 1 year of experience, how can you do so well?" Tae-suk cheerfully said, "I have been working a lot since I graduated from high school, sir." Jo-song pretended to remember, and said, "Oh, you have a job like that, huh? It slipped my mind." Tae-suk climbed up the ladder and said to him, "It's not your mind, it's because you drink every day and don't remember anything." These words annoyed Jo-song a bit. Tae-suk chuckled, and continued his work, while saying to Jo-song, "You should smoke a cigarette and take a break, sir. Let me finish the rest of the work for you." But just as Tae-suk raised his arm to paint, a sharp pain from his lower back came. Jo-song below also noticed Tae-suk's face change, and he asked worriedly, "What's wrong, what's wrong?" Tae-suk, although he was in pain and trembling, still tried to say, "I'm fine." He waited for Jo-song to leave, then clenched his teeth to suppress the pain in his lower back. Could it be that the painkillers had stopped working? Tae-suk's chronic back pain was not a one-day thing. It had lasted for more than 6 months since Tae-suk carried a board and twisted his back. During that half-year period, Tae-suk had to keep taking painkillers to endure the work. Tae-suk managed to work until the end of the day. When handing over the shift, the team leader Park told Jo-song to clean up the materials at the construction site, which was originally Tae-suk's job, so Jo-song complained loudly. "Why is that, sir?" the team leader Park asked him coldly. "Didn't you hear? Tae-suk has done all his work today. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it." Jo-song pouted and said, "The team leader only likes Tae-suk." The team leader Park got angry and yelled at him, "You should try to be a decent person. Of course I like him. Don't deny it and do it." Under the pressure of the team leader, Jo-song had no choice but to do Tae-suk's part of the work. The team leader Park turned to ask Tae-suk, "Tae-suk, is your back okay?" Tae-suk smiled and said, "Yes, but thanks to the team leader's concern, it's still okay." The team leader asked Tae-suk, "Do you still have no intention of switching to the carpenter side?" Tae-suk was a bit hesitant. "That sounds tiring, sir. I'm actually quite tired now." The team leader didn't push him anymore. Hearing that, he asked the other workers around, "Who wants to go home today? Go home. Who wants to have a drink? Stay." He asked and then turned to ask Tae-suk, "What about you? Have a drink?" Tae-suk smiled and declined, saying, "I think I have to go to the hospital. I ran out of medicine, sir." The team leader didn't keep him, and just told Tae-suk to be careful and turned away. Tae-suk then took a taxi by the roadside to go to the hospital. Sitting in the car, Tae-suk could not help but think about his current situation. Tae-suk knew clearly that now if he did not take medicine, he could not work. So he applied for jobs everywhere, hoping to get an office job at a good company. But Tae-suk's life was so unlucky that he never passed the resume screening stage. Everything piled up on Tae-suk's shoulders like a burden, and the pain in his back became more and more severe. It was not until late at night that Tae-suk arrived at the private hospital in the city. During the examination, Tae-suk was very delirious. The pain in his lower back was due to Tae-suk's chronic disc herniation for many years. Because of this condition, his body could not endure manual labor anymore. As soon as Dr. Hanan pressed on the lower back area, Tae-suk was in so much pain that he cried out loud. Dr. Hanan sighed and talked about Tae-suk's current condition. He said that the nerve between the 4th and 5th vertebrae seemed to protrude out. He said that this was exhausting, and that he could not do any more work. Tae-suk hesitated a bit and then cautiously said to him, if he did not do this job, he would not have any food to eat. Dr. Hanan interrupted Tae-suk directly. He said that he had told him to look for another job. He said that Tae-suk was such a guy, and that he wanted to be like his father. Dr. Han Yuen's words made Tae-suk freeze. He was not only a doctor, but also a close friend of Tae-suk's family. In the blink of an eye, the memories of the day Tae-suk's father died 13 years ago came back to his mind. His father's death was due to an accident at the construction site. The The company after his death had shifted the responsibility to the subcontractor, but the director of the subcontractor's company had disappeared without a trace after the company went bankrupt. Just like that, Tae-suk's father died without anyone being held accountable. Dr. Hanan said that he had nothing else to say. He angrily yelled at Tae-suk, if that was the case, then he should not come to him again. Dr. Hanan directly called the nurse and took Tae-suk out, and did not accept Tae-suk's medical fee. He said loudly to Tae-suk that if he still did that job, he should not come again. Tae-suk could only say 3 words of apology from beginning to end. After Tae-suk left, Dr. Hanan quietly opened his phone. He secretly transferred a large amount of money to someone. Although he scolded him, he could not abandon this child. After transferring the money, Dr. Hanan leaned back on the chair inside. He thought to himself, why did Chong-ha have to meet Hyun-min first and live in misery? Chong-ha and Hyun-min in Dr. Han Yuen's mind were the mother and the deceased father of Tae-suk. After Tae-suk's father died in that unfortunate accident, Tae-suk's mother also fell seriously ill. She spent her days in the hospital, her body dried up and lifeless. Tae-suk worked during the day, and at night he changed his office clothes and went to the hospital to stay by his mother's bedside. He worriedly asked his mother if she was in a lot of pain. Tae-suk's mother tried to smile. She said that she was fine, that she was not in as much pain as he thought. She asked if the person who sent the money was him, and how he had any money. Tae-suk was confused when he heard about the money. Tae-suk's mother gave him the transaction history on her phone to look at carefully. Tae-suk became more doubtful about life. He did not know who sent the money, whether it was the subcontractor's director, the team leader, or Uncle Han-un. Seeing Tae-suk silent, Tae-suk's mother asked him how his work was, and if he was tired. Tae-suk smiled and said that he was fine, that his seniors at the company were very nice, so he worked comfortably. Tae-suk's mother was touched by her son. She softly said that it was good, that their son was very hard-working, and that she also had to recover. Tae-suk said that his mother was very tired, and that she should sleep. Tae-suk's mother just smiled at her son and said that he was very tired these days, that their son had come this far, and that she did not know how to apologize. Tae-suk suppressed his bitter feelings. He forced a smile and said that it was okay, that he was with his mother today, and that she should sleep a little and then talk more. Tae-suk gently patted his mother's thin hands that were struggling with illness. That night, because he was too exhausted, Tae-suk fell asleep next to the bed. Tae-suk's mother did not sleep deeply. She gently took her blanket and covered her son. She looked at his sleeping face and could not help but laugh bitterly. Her honest and naive son named Tae-suk even bothered to change his office clothes to make her less worried. But the smell on his body was too familiar. It was the smell from her late husband, the smell of a man who worked at a construction site, the smell that made her know what he was doing. Tae-suk's mother choked up looking at her son. She really wanted to tell Tae-suk not to bear it alone anymore, that she would definitely get better, that she thanked him, and that he knew her heart. The next morning, Tae-suk went to the construction site again. The subcontractor's director had a few sips of beer to warm his stomach early in the morning. He asked the people around him, had Tae-suk arrived yet? As soon as he mentioned him, he appeared. Tae-suk walked in and bowed politely, wishing the director a good morning. Following Tae-suk was Jae-oh-sung with a weary look. The director saw him and asked him what was wrong with him. Had he not washed his face? Jae-oh-sung was startled. He stammered and apologized, saying that he had a little drink last night. The director said in an unhappy tone that he should go wash his face and come back. If he saw the members of the Il-sung group, he should avoid them and not swear. After scolding Jae-oh-sung, the director looked at Tae-suk. He said, Tae-suk, make some coffee, and only put half a spoon of sugar for him. Tae-suk happily did as he was told. After making coffee, the director asked Tae-suk how he was doing. Tae-suk politely said he was still the same, not good and not bad. The director probed for a while and then brought up the main topic. He repeated what team leader Park had told Tae-suk yesterday, that they were short of carpenters, and asked if he could go. Tae-suk hesitated and said that being a carpenter might be too tiring for him. The director chuckled and said, Tae-suk, I heard your regular job is also tiring. Will you just paint walls and earn 110,000 won with difficulty? Go be a carpenter and earn 150,000 won. Tae-suk swallowed his saliva and said softly that he wanted to, but his back was injured. Before Tae-suk could finish his sentence, the director sighed loudly and said in a loud voice, That's enough, this guy is broken, really broken. Tae-suk did not argue back, he just smiled wryly to let it go. Through this conversation, Tae-suk also confirmed that the director was not the person who had sent money to his mother. Because Tae-suk did his job well, the people at the construction site treated him well, but the person who helped Tae-suk behind the scenes was not for personal reasons, so it had to be someone else. And Tae-suk only knew one person like that. Tae-suk pressed the phone number of Dr. Han-on. As soon as the phone was connected, Tae-suk smiled and said thank you to him. Tae-suk said he was Tae-suk and asked if he had sent the money. The voice of Dr. Han-on was cold and came through. He said yes, it was him. Tae-suk said he would definitely repay this favor. Dr. Han-on said indifferently that it was fine. He hung up and asked if he was still at the construction site. For this question from Dr. Han-on, Tae-suk did not answer for a long time. Dr. Han-on angrily shouted at Tae-suk over the phone. He said, "You kid, listen to me, do you understand? Stop working at the construction site right now, you idiot." The voice of Dr. Han-on was a bit tired. He told Tae-suk that he should find another job soon, and then because he had a patient, the call was cut off. Tae-suk patted his aching back and thought to himself, a guy like me has to be in debt every day. Suddenly, Tae-suk's phone lit up, and a new notification appeared on top. For a moment, then his weary face instantly turned into excitement and joy. Because after all, the opportunity had finally come to Tae-suk after 200 challenges. He had finally passed the selection round of Elsung Group and only had the final interview left to set foot in the office environment. But that was not all. As Tae-suk was happy that luck finally smiled at him, a very bright light suddenly appeared from the sky. When he came to his senses, Tae-suk opened his eyes wide and looked at what appeared in front of him. It looked like a notice from the void telling Tae-suk that his wish had been fulfilled. Tae-suk was confused and did not understand what it was. Especially the line above, the wish had become reality. What was this thing? Tae-suk reached out to erase the notice. But no matter what he did, it did not disappear. Tae-suk became more confused. He thought to himself, what was he seeing? He must not be here. At that moment, Tae-suk realized that the notice had changed. It displayed a reminder, saying that he had accessed the course to guide him to become an official employee of the Elsung Group. Would he follow the instructions? Tae-suk read it and felt more confused. He thought to himself, guide what? He was not joking. Tae-suk thought that he was seeing things. He turned to ask his colleague. The colleague was smoking and heard Tae-suk call. He turned and asked what was wrong. Did he want a cigarette? Tae-suk said no, he was not crazy, but he did not know if there was any writing in front of his eyes. The colleague looked at Tae-suk pensively, then he changed his eyes from confused to terrified, looking at Tae-suk like a madman. The colleague shouted that this kid had been drinking since early morning, and told him to stop talking nonsense and go away. Tae-suk was also shocked and hurriedly apologized. Tae-suk then ran into the restroom of the construction site. He was right, no one else could see that thing. If they could see it, they would have been surprised and told him before. Then what was that thing? Why did no one else see it, but only him? Tae-suk ran into the men's bathroom. He used the last test, which was to look in the mirror. But even though Tae-suk stood in front of the mirror, he did not see the words reflected on the screen. Tae-suk tensely swallowed. He stared in the mirror and muttered, honestly, was he crazy, or was he dreaming? The reason why Tae-suk felt absurd was because the Elsung company was where he wanted to go, but it was just a guide. This only happened in movies, novels, or games. How could it be so easy? But then Tae-suk regained his determination. His dream was to join a big company, and Elsung Perfect was a company that he wanted to work for. Tae-suk decided to believe in this system. The system screen seemed to hear Tae-suk's thoughts. It quickly showed a message saying that it started to guide the process of becoming an official employee. Gradually, these notices would be easy to use for a period of 1 year, then you would lose your memory when you start the mission. Tae-suk became more confused when he heard about losing his memory. Before he could think more, the system displayed another message. It said that Tae-suk's task was to follow the instructions and receive the evaluation questions for new employees. It also gave Tae-suk 2 choices, 1, to give up the job as a new employee and erase his memory, or 2, to complete the assigned task. Tae-suk still felt a bit confused. The first test, what a personality test it was. Although he didn't understand what was going on, he decided to take the current task and see who the crazy one was. Right after that, he selected the agree option on the screen. Since he had started the display, Tae-suk had received the title of job seeker as a trial for completing the guidance part. The skill that Tae-suk received was the eyes of the job seeker of Elsung Group. Tae-suk was even more puzzled when he heard that the skill he received was the eyes of the job seeker. But before he had time to think about what that skill was, his vision suddenly became distorted. Tae-suk suddenly felt everything become empty. The system also gave a reminder to Tae-suk. It said that this skill allowed him to identify the possible outcomes among the evaluation issues on the market. If he used it for a long time, he would experience physical decline, so he should only use it when necessary. Although he was a bit skeptical about life, Tae-suk still wanted to test it to see if it was true. Right after that, Tae-suk went to the city library. He didn't know which publisher made the personality assessment. However, just now Tae-suk clearly heard the system say that if he used the power, he could distinguish it. So Tae-suk decided to go to the city library and use the new skill he had just received to find the book with the personality assessment. Tae-suk took a deep breath and closed his eyes tightly. After gathering all his determination, Tae-suk opened his eyes wide to try the skill he had just received as a job seeker. But he didn't feel any difference. His vision was still the same, without any change. Tae-suk felt confused. He decided to look closely at the books to try again. But no matter how hard Tae-suk looked, the books were still dull and nothing different. It seemed that the system saw Tae-suk as too pitiful, so it appeared again. It reminded Tae-suk that the skill could only be used in the building owned by Elsung Group. Tae-suk angrily yelled, saying that there were too many requirements, and that it had made him look like he was going to explode his eyes since then. In the end, Tae-suk couldn't use the skill of the job seeker's eyes to find the book he needed, but he also bought all the sets of questions at the bookstore to study. However, before Tae-suk opened the cover of each book, he wanted to test that skill again, because the place where Tae-suk returned was the construction site belonging to Elsung Group. But with the right person in the right place, here Tae-suk could completely use the supernatural skill he had just received to distinguish what content he needed to read to prepare for the upcoming interview. Among the 12 books that Tae-suk bought, there were 2 that were necessary, and one of the contents in those 2 books turned into green light. After knowing what he needed, Tae-suk decided to return the books he didn't need to the bookstore, and he studied the things with the green light that he saw all night. Tae-suk studied hard until the day of the interview, when he was rummaging through his closet to find a suitable outfit. The system displayed next to him, reminding him that wearing a neat office outfit would be better. Tae-suk naturally followed. He chose a polite white shirt and tied the tie neatly. After closing the vest and looking handsome, Tae-suk reassured himself in the mirror. He should not be nervous at this important moment. This was the big dream of Tae-suk's life. He had to seize this opportunity. The blue sky of the city seemed to give more energy to Tae-suk on the interview day. Because he was not too confident, he kept reading the important contents throughout the way to Elsung Corporation. Even on the bus, Tae-suk did not stop reviewing the necessary information. Although the system kept displaying messages that annoyed him, on the other hand, it also helped Tae-suk a lot. After more than half an hour of moving, Tae-suk arrived at Elsung Corporation. The staff there guided him to the exam room on the 2nd floor. As soon as Tae-suk went upstairs, he saw 2 employees of Elsung Corporation whispering loudly. They said that the candidate number 9861 was okay, which was also Tae-suk's number. The system displayed a message reminding him that he had passed the dress test. Tae-suk immediately breathed a sigh of relief. In the basic evaluation, people said that the dress was free. However, Elsung Corporation also had an attitude towards the interviews in this indirect way. This was a thorough evaluation. Elsung was a prominent corporation with many different fields: fashion, logistics, shopping, transportation, tourism, anything you can think of. Because it was such a place, Elsung checked thoroughly like this. Through a few basic steps, Tae-suk finally started taking the test for the selection round. The exam room was crowded with candidates and Tae-suk was just one of many other potential candidates of Elsung Corporation. In the exam room, there were all kinds of expressions: anxious, calm, etc. The big difference between those who knew and those who did not know which set of questions the exam was from was very clear in the exam room. And most of them were people who were confused and did not know what the exam was like. At least Tae-suk had an advantage in this part, because thanks to the skill of the job seeker's eyes, he had memorized the necessary contents. At the time of the exam, a woman entered the room and spoke loudly with a microphone. She introduced herself as Kim Chung-mi, an employee of company 52017, and hoped that everyone would cooperate today. A man walking next to her introduced himself as Kang Min-jun, an assistant of company 52014, and came here to help everyone take the personality test. 2 people asked all the candidates below, saying that there were some of you who came from far away and some of you who were nearby. Did anyone feel any inconvenience when coming here? Right after that, a hand was raised. A woman said that I came from Chuncheon. I heard that another company would pay for the transportation costs. I wonder if your company will reimburse the transportation costs. Tae-suk heard this question and took a deep breath. He thought to himself, how could this person enter the company with such an attitude? Sure enough, right after that, the system notified Tae-suk that the job seeker Jun Misa was about to be eliminated from the test. And Jun Misa was the woman who just asked that question. Tae-suk didn't care about the things around him. He had to finish the exam as quickly as possible. However, Tae-suk was confused whether he had to answer all 200 questions correctly or make a few mistakes. The test had a total of 200 questions. The maximum time was 30 minutes. Right after that, the proctor shouted that there was only 1 minute left. Tae-suk didn't hesitate. With the level of fierce dialogue to enter the Elsung group like that, he didn't need to do it moderately. Tae-suk didn't care who gave him that ability, but if he was allowed to use it, he had to do it right from start to finish. The next morning, Tae-suk continued to go to the construction site, and at noon, Tae-suk's team went to a udon noodle shop for lunch. Team leader Park casually asked Tae-suk, why didn't you go to work yesterday? You went out all day and didn't bother to answer the phone. Are you dating? Or do you have a girlfriend? If not, then go to some beautiful place with some beautiful people. Tae-suk hesitated and didn't know how to answer. He could only say 2 words of apology. Because if he said he went to interview a big company, he would definitely be seen as a traitor by these people. Team leader Park of course didn't doubt anything about Tae-suk. Mr. Smile was right. The young kid could do that. Make money and spend it, but also go out and vent your feelings, right? I will speak well with the directors, so don't worry. Tae-suk was embarrassed and thanked the team leader. Anyway, he had a good time with the team leader and the members of the team. However, people don't die for themselves. His salary would be better if he didn't continue to do this hard work. As Tae-suk was eating with the members of the team, he suddenly noticed that the system had changed. A notification popped up right in front of Tae-suk's face, saying you have passed the personality assessment. Tae-suk was so terrified that he jumped up. The system reminded Tae-suk, saying you should prepare for the interview. However, Tae-suk was not yet happy when the system issued another notification, saying that there were tasks related to the interview. The general task is to prepare mentally for the difficult interview. A stressful interview is waiting for you. Before entering this interview you have to meet the construction site director. Tae-suk saw that the main task was to go and meet the construction site director. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth. This thing told him to go and meet the director. Are you crazy? Make him meet that person. The system didn't care about Tae-suk's thoughts. It continued to show another reminder. The reward for this task is unknown, but the disadvantage of not participating in the interview is that Tae-suk will have to change the construction site from Jecheon to Gyeongsang Namjinju. As Tae-suk was not sure how to choose, suddenly the team leader's phone had a notification. Seeing the name of the caller, Captain Park was a bit surprised. He hurriedly picked up the phone and asked what the director wanted. The person on the other end of the line asked if Tae-suk was there, and told him to come here for an interview. Captain Park heard this and his mood suddenly brightened. He looked coldly at Tae-suk and nodded. His voice was also cold and said, I will tell him to come right away. Captain Park, after hanging up the phone, whispered to Tae-suk, the director called you. Tae-suk uttered a sound and stood up and pushed the chair in. He said faintly, I will go right away. The director called me, right? Captain Park heard these words and suddenly burst out laughing. He exclaimed, really? What is this? You said you would go to see the director, right? Tae-suk breathed a sigh. His tone was not very comfortable and said, he is the one who pays me. I have to avoid him until then. However, Tae-suk did not want to miss the opportunity to work at Elsung Corporation. He had no other choice. Now he could only go there and meet the director. Tae-suk went to the office of the director of the construction site. After Tae-suk entered, as soon as he saw Tae-suk, the director's face became difficult. Tae-suk tensely looked at him. Then, the director coldly said, okay Tae-suk, I have thought about it. Starting from tomorrow you will be a carpenter with Captain Go. Tae-suk said faintly to the director, I can't decide like that. As soon as Tae-suk finished speaking, the director went crazy and yelled at his face, hey Tae-suk, don't you know your health? How long do you intend to do as you please? Tae-suk bowed his head and said hiding is also a good enough job. The director angrily shouted, saying that others can easily find hiding, but now there is no carpenter to be found. There is a carpenter right next to me and I know him too. These words made Tae-suk feel extremely uncomfortable. He wondered why he had to listen to these things. As he predicted, he could not talk politely with the director. Then, the system suddenly showed a message saying that the linked mission chain had been opened. The first mission in Tae-suk's mission chain was to listen to the director's story. Show your human side to the director and talk calmly. Tae-suk saw this mission and felt a headache. Just now if the system did not show the message, maybe Tae-suk would have stood up and left this room. Tae-suk pursed his lips and snorted coldly. In the end, Tae-suk still followed the system. He took a deep breath and said to the director, "You calm down first. You tell me what happened, only then can we solve it." With these words of Tae-suk, the director was troubled and said that there was no carpenter on the second floor. We could not meet the construction time according to the contract deadline. He stressed out and yelled at Tae-suk, "If we let time pass like that, we will lose millions of won every day." The director angrily pointed at Tae-suk and asked if he could not do that job. Tae-suk frowned. He knew that was a proposal that 100% damaged him, but he had no other choice but to take a step back. The director's voice kept ringing. He said, "I really need you, just a few days. No, just do it in a week." Tae-suk took a deep breath, then he said faintly, "I know, 1 week is enough, right?" The director saw Tae-suk agree and smiled, saying, "That's right, you should have done this from the beginning, my friend. Do you know how much I care about you? Although I only say this now, in the past I have thought about whether to take you to the Jinju construction site or not." These words of the director only made Tae-suk more uncomfortable. The director was still happy and said, "Anyway, thank you very much for appearing like this. You understand my heart, right? Just this once, just one more time." Right at this moment, the phone in the director's pocket rang. The caller was the chairman of the group. The director hurriedly answered the phone, saying, "I have solved it. We will complete the construction within a week." He also promised the chairman on the other end of the line that the construction site would definitely be completed within a week. The other members of the team, after hearing the director say the completion time was a week, seemed confused. Clearly he was the one who insisted it would be late. The director happily said that the guy Tae-suk in the team had joined and would do very well, so the time was definitely only within a week. Tae-suk then continued his work. While he was painting, team leader Park suddenly called him. He told Tae-suk to come down for a moment and greet Director Choi of the Elsung group. Tae-suk didn't dare to disobey. He slowly walked down the stairs. Tae-suk smiled and greeted me, saying, "I am Kim Tae-suk, very happy to meet you." The man who was Director Choi also replied happily, saying, "You have worked hard. I am Choi K-dong." Tae-suk politely reached out and shook hands with Director Choi. Director Choi smiled and said to Tae-suk, "I was very worried because the project here was not finished yet. Thanks to you, Tae-suk, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief." Tae-suk smiled and said that "I am very happy to help you." Although he looked happy on the outside, but inside he was resisting fiercely. He had worked too hard for a week to the point that his back was numb. Director Choi didn't see the uncomfortable expression on Tae-suk's face. He turned to team leader Park and said that tomorrow I will go to the headquarters. So today is the last day, let's have a drink. Then he turned to ask Tae-suk to have a drink with him. Under the expectation of the two leaders, Tae-suk was embarrassed and said, "I'm sorry. I have an appointment tonight." That night, after finishing work at the construction site, Tae-suk once again went to the private hospital where Dr. Hanan was. As soon as Tae-suk entered the clinic of Dr. Hanan, a loud scream of pain rang out in the hospital. Dr. Hanan was trying hard to reset Tae-suk's spine. He angrily said, "This idiot. I told you not to use force on your back." Tae-suk screamed in pain. He groaned and begged you to be gentle. Dr. Hanan became even more angry. He said to this kid, "Don't you need your back anymore?" As soon as he finished speaking, the doctor continued to press hard on Tae-suk's back, making him scream for his parents. Dr. Slippery Hanan sighed and said, "I don't know. You go up to the second floor for physical therapy." Tae-suk cried in pain, but he could not give up here. The interview was coming soon. He just needed to try a little more. So, Tae-suk finally got through the hellish week. This time he continued to go to Elsung Corporation to do the interview. Tae-suk and the other candidates entered the interview room. He clearly said, "Hello, I am Kim Tae-suk." But as soon as Tae-suk looked up, he accidentally saw a familiar person. One of the judges of today's interview was Director Choi. Seeing Tae-suk's surprised face, Director Choi just smiled kindly and said, "This is the first time we meet, right? First sit down." Another judge started interviewing Tae-suk. But he had not yet asked anything. Director Choi wanted to ask first. Then, Director Choi called another candidate named Kang Min-gwi. He asked him if he could stand up a bit. The candidate immediately stood up straight. Director Choi looked down at his pants and said, "Black pants and white socks. What do you think?" Candidate Kang Min-gwi was immediately embarrassed. He stuttered and said, "I think it doesn't match very well." Director Choi nodded and sighed. He said, "That's right. This interview is the stressful interview that the system warned me about. Even though you knew that, you still dressed like that. What do you think now?" Because Director Choi said and smiled very casually. But those words made the others feel terrible. Candidate Kang Min Gwi could not answer. Director Choi asked more and more, "Why don't you answer? Don't you understand your own mood? Can't you control your emotions?" Candidate Kang Min Gwi shivered and bit his lip. He panicked and thought that the mood was not good. What to do? Tell me to say that, now, here, no. I have to endure this interview. Surely this is the interview to evaluate patience, so be patient. However, his entire face was seen by Director Choi. Just with those expressions, Director Choi was enough to confirm that this candidate had weak nerves, was not good at speaking, and besides, he also lacked the ability to handle situations. Director Choi quietly marked a low score next to the name of candidate Kang Min Gwi, then called the next person, Kang Hee-jin. The pressing questions started to ring again. Director Choi asked candidate Kang Hee-jin why she had no experience in society. She didn't work part-time, didn't volunteer. Candidate Kang Hee-jin hesitated and said that instead, "I focused on studying more." Director Choi interrupted her, saying that it seemed like you only cared about studying. Right, that's not the talent that our company needs. Candidate Kang Hee-jin immediately did not know how to answer. Director Choi raised his voice and told her to speak properly. "I will also say the same to the customer later," with just a few simple words like that. But it was enough to make this candidate scared and stressed to the point of crying. She just cried directly in the middle of the interview room. Through observing the two candidates next to the interview, Tae-suk also saw that the reason why Director Choi changed the order of the questions was that the interview was conducted like this, so he had to prepare himself to filter the answers in advance. Director Choi looked at Tae-suk and asked him, "Which school did you graduate from, Mr. Kim Tae-suk?" Tae-suk confidently said, "I got my degree through the credit banking system." Director Choi stared at Tae-suk and asked, "So you never went to college, right?" Tae-suk didn't waver and replied that was exactly right. Director Choi frowned. He continued to ask Tae-suk, "Exactly like that, huh? I guess you have a lot to say about it, right?" Tae-suk took a deep breath. If he withdrew here, he would be eliminated, so he had to show his life as honestly as possible. Tae-suk showed a determined look in his eyes. Only that way he could touch the heart of the interviewer. Tae-suk stood up straight and said to Director Choi that I had to make money. Director Choi exclaimed, saying that's how it is. We are the same. I work at the company to make money. Mr. Kim Tae-suk didn't go to college to make money, right? Tae-suk didn't back down and confidently said yes, but I don't regret it. Instead of going to college, I worked at the construction site and in the evening when I finished work, I used my free time to study. I never neglected my life. I didn't go to college like others, but I learned in my own way and got a computer and technician certificate. Whenever I tried to fill in what I hadn't done, I think the result is that I got a degree through the credit banking system instead of going to college. Director Choi clearly couldn't have guessed that Tae-suk would answer like that. He opened his eyes wide and said, "I understand." Then Director Choi looked at the other judges. They exchanged something. It seemed that everyone was quite satisfied with Tae-suk's answer. The remaining judge turned to ask Tae-suk, "How far can you do for the Elsung group?" Tae-suk's head quickly switched gears. This might be a difficult question for others, but this was something that Tae-suk had thought about many times before. However, there was only one reason why Tae-suk wanted to go to a big group. That was if he didn't have to work hard, he just had to pay a lot of money. So as long as Tae-suk didn't have to worry about his mother's expenses and could support himself, he could do anything. Tae-suk said what he thought. He answered the three judges, saying as long as it doesn't violate the law and what society allows, I can do anything. The judge heard that and frowned and asked Tae-suk again, "What is violating the law? What is allowed by society? Why do you have such strict conditions?" Tae-suk confidently answered, saying that because it would ruin the image of the group and my future. I support the honesty and reliability of the Elsung group and appreciate the contribution to society. Therefore, if such a request is made, the Elsung group will surely go according to the group's goal. I will recommend it again. When he said these things to the three judges, Tae-suk knew that this was 100% not the correct answer. However, there is no perfect answer to whether you can persuade the interviewer or not from the beginning. That is also the pressure of the interview. The three judges stopped talking about this topic. The remaining judge asked Tae-suk, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Tae-suk smiled and said no. The judge asked Tae-suk why not. Tae-suk chuckled and said that there are no women around me. If there are good people around you interviewers, please introduce them to me, then we will have time to meet. Tae-suk's confidence and humor made the three judges laugh, and the atmosphere of the interview relaxed a bit. That's how Tae-suk's interview was completed. Director Choi smiled and told the three of them that the interview was over, and they should go outside. The next day, Tae-suk came back to the construction site to finish the work of a carpenter. When Tae-suk was struggling to pat his sore back, Team Leader Park came. Team Leader Park said that it was hard work because of the work. Tae-suk sighed and said hello, there was nothing special when I was not here, right? Team Leader Park snorted and said that how could there be nothing special, there was no fun without you here. Hearing that, Tae-suk seemed to have a rough idea of what happened yesterday. Surely Choi Oh-song had caused some trouble at the construction site. Tae-suk tiredly sighed. Although Choi Oh-song was a young man, he was also a hardworking person, so he quickly became a skilled worker. Tae-suk was still thinking when the voice of Team Leader Park rang out. The team leader said that today they would go to a party. Everyone could go, right? Tae-suk slowly asked the team leader, did Team Leader go invite me to dinner today? Team Leader Park hesitated when he heard Team Leader go. Tae-suk tiredly bowed his head and said that anyway, they had been working together for a week. Team Leader Park's face looked a bit annoyed, but at that moment, the system screen reminded Tae-suk that the normal task had been open, which was to join the party and listen to the stories of the brothers. There were no rewards and penalties. Tae-suk saw these lines and was stunned. How could there be no rewards and penalties for the task? What did that mean? Tae-suk quickly figured out the problem. He hurriedly asked Team Leader Park, what was on the menu for the party? Team Leader Park smiled and said that of course it was grandma's rice soup. Tae-suk smirked and told the team leader, if you don't eat Korean beef, I will go with Team Leader Go. At times like this, people can earn 200,000 won a day, like you have to treat them, right? He said that and Tae-suk didn't wait for the team leader to agree. He turned to tell everyone that today the team leader would treat us to Korean beef. The people behind immediately cheered. Team Leader Park, although he was a bit stingy, could not refuse the request. He sighed and said, oh my, this guy is really, okay, everyone knows, today go eat beef. That's how a group of 4 people went to a barbecue restaurant near the construction site to party. Because the work environment lately was quite stressful, this was like a drinking session for everyone to vent out all their recent feelings. Team Leader Park sighed and said that we have to nurture the domestic engineers, but they are always treated coldly. Because of the alcohol, he said that my brother is a good engineer, although he has worked in that field for more than 20 years, but he can't get a salary of 5 million won, so I couldn't get a certificate, nor study. Team Leader Park was angry every time he thought of this issue. He sighed and said that he was useless. Jo-song ate and laughed and said that the team leader was not like that. Every time the manager went to the adult entertainment area, that's why Tae-suk looked at the atmosphere on the table and knew that everyone was drunk. But even though they were drunk, they were not wrong about what they said. The treatment of technical personnel was very harsh. The industrial motivation in the future will belong to the fields of science and technology, IT, pharmaceuticals and life sciences. Tae-suk didn't know where his future would stop. A week after the day that Tae-suk came to Ilsung Group to go through a direct interview, this time he came to Ilsung Group to continue a group interview. When Tae-suk was waiting for his turn to interview, Team Leader Park called him, and he asked Tae-suk why he didn't come. Tae-suk was black-faced. He casually said that I told you before, clearly yesterday I said I would take a day off. Team Leader Park sat in the room a bit annoyed and replied to Tae-suk, I told you to come. Come here you kid. Today I don't feel like working. I stayed up all night. However, Tae-suk said clearly that I'm sorry, but I will come tomorrow. I hung up here, and then Tae-suk bluntly hung up the phone. Right after that, an employee of Ilsung Group also came to Tae-suk. She smiled and said that you are the one who passed the first round of interviews, right? I will guide you to the discussion place. After entering the room, Tae-suk was explained clearly, saying that the second round of interviews would be a group discussion of 10 people. Just follow the instructions of the person who discussed. Tae-suk confidently stepped in. The moderator said that the topic of the group discussion this time was Korea among the OECD countries, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. We will discuss the solution and the reason for the high cost of education. When discussing, first raise your hand to indicate the number and name and then speak. Tae-suk slightly smiled. Compared to what he worried, everything was fine until now, because he had just heard this topic through the stories on the drinking session with Team Leader Park and the employees of the team before, so Tae-suk had an advantage. Thinking of that, Tae-suk silently thanked Team Leader Park. The moderator of the interview marked something on the document. He looked at the candidates with force. Then he said, from now on, we will start the group discussion interview. Tae-suk nervously stared at his number. It was number 2, a pretty good number. As soon as the group discussion interview started, Candidate number 3 Park In-soo raised his hand to speak. He confidently expressed his opinion. He said, "I think education has had a huge impact on the economic development of South Korea, and it has led to an unwanted effect of overspending on education. However, I believe that we can become one of the top 10 economies in the world thanks to our excellent human resources. The cost of education has increased a little, but we still have to continue to nurture talent in the future." Tae-suk silently gasped when he heard these words. He thought that candidate number 3 was really stupid. Just by listening, Tae-suk could tell that he did not understand the problem and was answering off topic. The topic was the reason for the high cost of education and the solution. Tae-suk was happy that he had given his opinion first. But if it was an opinion like that, it would be better to say nothing. The people sitting around seemed to think the same as Tae-suk. Right after that, candidate number 7 Choi Joon-hee also gave her opinion. She said, "My parents spent about 300 million won to send me to college. And I think that this large amount of money is due to the low birth rate. So I think that we can encourage childbirth and increase the welfare benefits for them." Tae-suk was a bit thoughtful about this opinion of candidate number 7. Another person in the group also agreed with Choi Joon-hee's opinion. He said the number of young people decreased after the nuclear family plan was implemented. The cost of education for a child is increasing, so encouraging childbirth is the best measure. Tae-suk quickly analyzed that opinion. That is a reasonable opinion, but that is not what a company should do. The company is not a community agency, so why worry about the birth rate? After listening to a series of opinions, Tae-suk decided to make his statement. He slowly stood up and said that I have a different perspective. The others heard that and were tense. Tae-suk faintly stated his opinion. He said that our country spends a lot of money on education, the best in the world. The college entrance rate is also ranked second. After saying this, Tae-suk stood up directly. He walked past the moderator of the interview to stand next to the chart above. Tae-suk pointed out the statistics on the chart and said that even so, how is the quality of education? Look at the OECD Education Index chart. The quality of education ranks 75th. Since childhood, instead of focusing on hobbies, we had to focus on studying. The opposite is in Germany. After completing the compulsory course, depending on their ability and interest, students will be allowed to choose between gymnasium, Gesamtschulen, and house school. The result is that the human resources that the country needs are met. Moreover, it still maintains a higher average salary than Korea and the income gap by occupation is not large. On the other hand, our country has an imbalance of human resources, support for science and technology, IT is not enough. Especially the group of engineers, primary level are gradually filling the position of foreign labor because of difficulties. Cumulative difficulties and being despised by society. That is why there are no candidates in the country. Tae-suk boldly said, "I believe that if the education system of our country changes like Germany, and reduce the excessive spending as now for education, it can help the development of the whole country." The other candidates were amazed after hearing Tae-suk's opinion, and Tae-suk was a bit doubtful whether what he said was related to each other or not. At that time, suddenly candidate number 10 squinted and asked Tae-suk, "You said our education is not fair." He used a bad face to ask Tae-suk, "Are you insulting the education of our country?" Tae-suk was startled by the two insulting words, and then he quickly thought again. Tae-suk did not know that his words were so offensive. He could not show his confusion at this time. Tae-suk quickly regained his confidence. He said faintly to candidate number 10, "If you feel uncomfortable, please forgive me. This is just my personal opinion. I really do not intend to insult anything." But candidate number 10 still did not let Tae-suk go. He said broadly to Tae-suk, saying that he did not consider the circumstances or characteristics of our country. "I think that it is not a good opinion to say that we should follow the system of foreign countries. What about our country? There are many talented people here. You all graduated from university in Seoul or abroad. You all came here to learn. What can we not do better than Germany?" As soon as he finished speaking, the interviewer also asked him, "Candidate number 10, what is your name?" He thought that he had caught the eye of the recruiter, so he confidently said that, "I am Jun Suk-in." Unexpectedly, right after that, the interviewer marked a check on the document, saying, "Thank you for coming here, you can go out now." Clearly, candidate number Jun 10th Suk-in was a bit shocked. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the interviewer. The interviewer just coldly said to him that, "Mr. Jun Suk-in, you seem to be not suitable for the criteria of our company. Thank you for participating." Only Tae-suk knew the reason why candidate Jun Suk-in was eliminated. Currently, Elsung Company wants talent that can integrate and cooperate in the organization. But Jun Suk-in is someone who looks down on others and has the view that he is the only one who is superior. According to the type of talent that Il-sung wants, it can be considered the worst talent. They have no reason to hire someone who always excludes others and thinks he is the center. That is why candidate number Jun 10th Suk-in was kicked out of the interview room immediately. After such a scene, the interviewer said to the group of people present in the room that this will be the second topic, which is to discuss the pension reform of the country. Time slowly passed by. Each candidate have different opinions, and in no time, half an hour had passed. Tae-suk felt a bit helpless. Although time flew by like that, the opinions were still divided and could not reach a conclusion. Tae-suk did not understand. So much time had passed, why did they not end it? Tae-suk looked at the interviewer. If only looking at the expression, it was clear that the guide was also annoyed. He could not let the interview continue like this. After thinking carefully, Tae-suk decided to speak up. He said, I do not think we can reach a conclusion in this situation. Summarizing the opinions so far, I think we can be divided into two types. Candidate number 1 said that the national pension and the occupational pension should be integrated like in Japan. Candidate number 2 said that the shortcomings of the national pension could be supplemented by private pensions or financial products. At this point, listen to everyone's opinions, draw a conclusion by which the number of votes is higher. These words of Tae-suk immediately attracted the attention of the interviewer. He squinted at Tae-suk, thinking that he was so annoyed that he led the discussion like that, right? But that was also the factor that Il-sung Group needed, which was the person who played the role of resolving disputes. That kind of person was very suitable for the type of person that Il-sung Group was looking for. After Tae-suk spoke up, the interviewer gently added a check mark on the document, then said to everyone that you have worked hard, today is enough, you can go home. The interviewer looked over the documents in his hand. Only candidate number 2 Kim Tae-suk passed the test with most of the marks being passed. After Tae-suk left the interview room, he encountered a quarrel. It turned out that candidate number 10 earlier was not satisfied with the result, so he was still making a fuss outside. He said that it was unfair to him. He shouted at the interviewer, saying, I think the reason I failed is unfair. Tae-suk sighed, thinking that some people did not admit anything. But when Tae-suk looked closely at the people in front of him, he suddenly saw the interviewer emit a blue light. This was clearly the effect of the eye skill of the applicant, but why did he suddenly be able to use it like that? Tae-suk bewilderedly realized that he could see different colors in each person, such as the interviewer had a green light. Tae-suk turned to look at the others. The candidates all had a distinct color. There were blue, orange and darker colors. Tae-suk quickly analyzed. After the group discussion interview ended, he had drawn 2 conclusions through this accidental experience. The first was that if he blinked 3 times in a row, the eye skill of the applicant would be activated even if he did not take the initiative. The second was that each person would be surrounded by red, orange or green light. Red was U20, orange seemed to be U22, green was 100% like the age of 30, but Tae-suk did not think that this was classified by age. What are these different colors? Tae-suk temporarily put that aside, and the next day he continued to go to the construction site to work, while helping the other workers at the construction site. Tae-suk received a notification from Il-sung Group. The human resources team of Il-sung Group announced that when Tae-suk had passed the group discussion interview, the final interview will be held at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Tae-suk smiled when he saw this notice. He thought to himself that he finally got to the final interview. He couldn't believe that a day like this would come to him. However, Tae-suk was also angry that he was not complacent. He shouldn't be too excited. Just try to stay calm and do well. Because only when he passed the final interview could Tae-suk achieve his dream. Because he was about to quit his job at the construction site, Tae-suk wanted to guide Mr. Jo-sung a little. Jo-sung took out a roller to prepare for painting. Tae-suk said from below that for the primer, he just needed to take a little bit on the top of the roller. That way, the speed would be faster. Jo-sung not only didn't take a little bit, but also scooped the roller straight into the paint bucket. Then he just swung the roller directly onto the wall. Tae-suk was below. Of course, he caught all the excess paint on the roller. Because he couldn't avoid it, Tae-suk got a big patch of paint. Right after that, Tae-suk's scream rang out, telling Mr. Jo-sung to drop the roller down. Drop it down. Jo-sung hurriedly climbed down the ladder. Seeing Tae-suk covered in paint, he felt sorry and asked Tae-suk, "Are you okay?" Tae-suk felt speechless. He said with a black face, "It's okay. Don't worry too much. Mr. Jo-sung has apologized like that. What else can he say?" Jo-sung still felt sorry. He always said sincerely sorry. He just intended to do well. Because of his sincere face, Tae-suk didn't intend to be angry. He just said faintly, "It's okay. I'll go wash my face and come back." Tae-suk went inside dejectedly. Team leader Park saw Tae-suk and was shocked. He asked Tae-suk, "What happened to you?" Tae-suk said sadly, "It was a work accident. I'll go back to the dormitory to take a shower and come back." Team leader Park heard that and thought, then said, "The dormitory is too far. Go to the public bath on the basement floor 1 to take a shower." He heard that it would open from today. Tae-suk heard that and wondered, "Is that okay? What if the staff here are prejudiced?" The captain smiled and said that after finishing today's work, all the employees had to take a bath, and they had to check if there was any inconvenience. Hearing this from the captain, Tae-suk did not have to go back to the dormitory anymore, but changed the location to the public bathhouse. Tae-suk was annoyed and dragged his body covered with paint down to the basement floor 1. This place had just opened, so it was quite deserted. As soon as Tae-suk entered, he could not stand it and hurriedly took off his shirt full of paint. He opened the bathroom door. Then he directly poured water from the shower. The paint on his body was also washed away a lot. After taking a quick shower, Tae-suk went down to the communal pool. Soaking in the hot water, Tae-suk felt relieved and sighed. Inside the bathhouse, there was another man who saw Tae-suk. He asked him what he was doing here. Tae-suk only realized that there was someone next to him. He was tired and said that he was a construction worker. The other man exclaimed. He asked Tae-suk if he was very tired. It seemed like he had paint all over his body. Tae-suk politely smiled and said that it was okay. He asked if he was the director here. The man smiled and said that he was not the director here, but it would be more correct to say that he was an official. Tae-suk heard that and exclaimed in surprise. He was excited and said that he was awesome. He had a good job, right? The income here was good, right? The man smiled and said that it was okay. No one could envy him anyway. Just like that, two strangers chatted intimately. They were chatting back and forth when suddenly the man fell into the water. It had been about a minute, but Tae-suk didn't see him come up. After more than 2 minutes, Tae-suk started to turn pale. This uncle wasn't drowning, was he? Tae-suk was scared and plunged into the water, shouting twice, "Uncle!" When Tae-suk was confused and about to dive into the water to pull the uncle's body up, then the other man came up. He laughed and asked Tae-suk what was wrong. Afraid this old man would die? Tae-suk sweated and said, "No, not like that. I was just a little surprised." The man then told Tae-suk that he had bad luck. He smiled and told Tae-suk that because he had bad luck, so when he dived in the public bath, he had to sweat for everything to go smoothly. Tae-suk was quite confused, but still nodded along. He also thought that if he didn't use it directly, he wouldn't be able to know the inconveniences that the customers faced. Tae-suk smiled and told the man that his professional spirit seemed strong. "You look full of vitality too." The man laughed and said of course he had to be healthy. If you want to live long, you have to exercise and be active. Isn't that right? Tae-suk felt that after soaking and chatting with the man, his body was also more comfortable. He came up from the water and said, "Maybe I should go now. Wish you success in business. Always be healthy. I hope something good will happen." The man also smiled and said goodbye to Tae-suk. He said that he also hoped that everything he did would be successful. When Tae-suk had changed his clothes and went out, another man came into the bathroom. After pushing the door inside, he called this fake uncle the chairman. He told the uncle that there were 40 minutes left until the inauguration ceremony. "Let's go, chairman." It turned out that the man that Tae-suk accidentally met was Chairman Kim Chang-imo of Elsung Group. Still unlucky, Chairman Kim Chang-imo told Tae-suk earlier that after building a new building, he had to bathe in it for a year. Otherwise, there would be an accident. Chairman Kim Chang-imo seemed reluctant. He muttered to himself that this year would be fine. But on Tae-suk's side, there was also a change. The system appeared and told Tae-suk that all he had to do was go there. That's it. Tae-suk looked bewildered. Did he believe it? How could he be so calm? Just go to Elsung Group and pass the interview round? The system seemed to know what Tae-suk was thinking. It also stubbornly displayed a message saying "Trust me." Tae-suk was not very confident, but he had no other choice. He thought to himself that if the system did not intend to help, he could prepare by himself. So that night, Tae-suk prepared everything, memorized everything from the current events, the economy, and the history of Elsung Group until now. Just like that, after a few days, he finally came to the final interview. Tae-suk wore a handsome vest to Elsung Group. Facing the strict judges, Tae-suk still confidently said that "I am Kim Tae-suk, I hope you will favor me." The 3 judges this time were completely different from the first time Tae-suk interviewed at Elsung Group. One of them told Tae-suk to sit down and start the interview. Tae-suk remembered what the system had told him. It had said that he didn't have to worry because luck had no effect on this interview. So Tae-suk decided to use the skill